Before a single Roman sewer had been built, one civilization had already engineered running water, covered drains, and private bathrooms for an entire empire, and then vanished so completely that the modern world only discovered them when a forgotten mound gave up its secrets in 1922. Sometime around 2600 BCE, in what is now Pakistan, a city appeared that was not built organically, it was designed. Mohenjo-Daro rose from the Indus floodplain as a precisely engineered metropolis, its streets running at right angles, north to south, east to west, as though drawn with a ruler across the landscape. The main boulevard stretched nearly 10 meters wide enough for 2 bullock carts to pass each other without slowing. But these streets were not simply roads, they were the surface layer of a water management system that ran through the entire city. What those planners had understood, 4,500 years ago, was that drainage follows geometry, and so they built the geometry first. This was not a city that grew street by street over centuries, it was a city that was planned, in full, before a single brick was laid. But a grid of streets is merely the surface, because beneath those streets, the builders of Mohenjo-Daro were hiding something that would not be matched anywhere in the world for 2,000 years. 700 wells, inside a single city, built 4,500 years ago. Beneath the dust of Sind, more than 700 individual wells have been identified within the boundaries of Mohenjo-Daro alone, each one carefully lined with precisely fitted fired bricks that taper inward as they descend. That works out to roughly 1 well for every 2 or 3 houses across the settlement. The scale of this speaks to a citywide commitment to accessible water, not concentrated at a palace or a temple, but distributed into every neighborhood. No city in ancient Mesopotamia or Egypt, both richer and far better documented in the ancient record, came close to this density of public water access. 700 wells in a single ancient city, the people of Mohenjo-Daro had solved, for every resident, a problem that most of the ancient world was still dying from. But getting water into a city is only half the challenge. What happened to that water after it was used is where the real genius of Mohenjo-Daro begins to show. Step inside almost any ordinary home in Mohenjo-Daro, 4,500 years ago, and you would find a room set aside for one specific purpose, bathing. Archaeological evidence from Mohenjo-Daro reveals that most homes featured a dedicated bathing area, a carefully laid brick platform, slightly raised and sloped toward a small drainage outlet in the wall. That outlet fed into a pottery pipe or brick-lined channel running beneath the alley outside, carrying wastewater directly into the city's sewer network. These were not luxury features belonging to the wealthy quarters, they were the standard arrangement of ordinary homes across the entire settlement. At a time when most of the world's population bathed in rivers or not at all, the residents of Mohenjo-Daro had drainage built into the fabric of their walls. A private bathing room with drainage, in an ordinary house, built 4,500 years before the first Victorian bathroom was considered a modern convenience. And those household drains did not simply empty into the open street, they connected to something far more sophisticated running beneath the city's foundations. Lift the bricks from the main street of Mohenjo-Daro, and beneath them you find a tunnel. Running beneath the streets of Mohenjo-Daro was an interconnected network of sewage channels, built from fired brick and sealed with mortar, large enough in some sections for a maintenance worker to crouch inside and move through. The channels were covered with flat brick lids that could be lifted for cleaning, a design detail that tells us the builders were not just planning for construction but for long-term upkeep, across generations. Household drains fed into smaller side channels, which merged into larger trunk sewers beneath the widest roads, carrying wastewater out of the city. This is not infrastructure patched together over time, it is a system that was engineered before the city was occupied. A covered, maintained, citywide sewage network, designed, built, and in operation around 2600 BCE, 2000 years before the Romans celebrated their own sewer as an engineering marvel. But the most dramatic piece of water infrastructure in Mohenjo-Daro was not buried at all, it stood at the highest point of the city, open to the sky, for every resident to see. At the highest point of Mohenjo-Daro stands a pool 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and nearly 2.5 meters deep, engineered around 2500 BCE to hold water without leaking a single drop. The Great Bath was constructed with thick walls of kiln-fired brick and sealed throughout with natural bitumen, the same tar-like substance that waterproofs modern roads, packed into every joint and surface to make the entire structure completely watertight. Steps descended from both ends into the pool, with what appeared to be changing rooms arranged along the perimeter. A dedicated large well nearby supplied fresh water, and a drain in the floor allowed the pool to be completely emptied and refilled. No inscription survives to tell us whether this was a ritual space, a civic bathhouse, or a facility for the city's administrators, and that silence has kept scholars debating for a century. A sealed, drainable public pool, built around 2500 BCE, more than 2000 years before Rome's famous public baths first opened their doors. The Great Bath was the most visible achievement, but what reveals the true depth of this civilization's engineering is something hiding inside the walls of its upper-story buildings. The homes of Mohenjo-Daro rose to 2 or more stories, and the question of what to do with waste from the upper floors had already been answered, in brick, before anyone else in the world had thought to ask it. Vertical slots were built into the exterior walls of multi-story Mohenjo-Daro homes, functioning as chutes that carried waste from the upper level down into covered pottery bins or brick-lined containers at street level below. From those bins, the waste was emptied into the main street drains and carried out of the city. This 3-tier system, upper floor chute, street-level collection point, underground sewer, separated household waste from public space, contained it at a fixed collection point, and routed it into a larger disposal network. A structured refuse collection infrastructure, operating in the 3rd millennium BCE, was a solution no other known civilization had yet implemented. Upper floor waste chutes, connecting to collection bins, connecting to underground sewers, a 3-tier waste management system, running in a city 4,500 years old. And every single component of this system, every well, every drain, every chute, every bath, was built from the same material, following the same precise proportions, across an area so vast it staggers the imagination. Here is the detail that silences every archaeologist who encounters it: the bricks used at Mohenjo-Daro and the bricks used at Harappa, over 500 kilometers to the north, are built to the same proportions, exactly. Across the entire Indus Valley civilization, a territory stretching roughly 1.25 million square kilometers, larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, builders followed a single standardized brick ratio of 4 to 2 to 1 in length, width, and height. This was not coincidence, it was a building system. That standardization meant that infrastructure built in Mohenjo-Daro in the south matched in dimension with infrastructure built in Harappa in the north, by builders who had likely never met, separated by more than 500 kilometers of river plain. Think of a modern building code, enforced consistently across a territory the size of Argentina, but without any surviving written law to enforce it. One precise brick standard, over 1 million square kilometers, enforced by a civilization that apparently just agreed, and left no document explaining how. And yet, for all this engineering genius, this civilization would one day leave those perfect cities empty, and the rest of the world would spend 2,000 more years struggling to build what they had already abandoned. The Romans are celebrated for their engineering, but when Rome constructed its famous Cloaca Maxima sewer around 600 BCE, the drains of Mohenjo-Daro had already been running, and already been abandoned, for over 1,000 years. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, was built around 600 BCE and is rightly regarded as one of antiquity's engineering achievements. But the covered brick drains of Mohenjo-Daro were already in operation by around 2600 BCE, 2000 years before a single Roman sewer stone was laid. And by around 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley cities had already begun a slow, apparently peaceful decline, no evidence of conquest, no burned buildings, no mass graves, for reasons historians still debate, among them climate shift, the drying of river courses, and the gradual collapse of long-distance trade. The civilization did not fall, it faded. And when archaeologists finally found Mohenjo-Daro again in 1922, it was the drains, still intact in the earth, still unmistakably functional in their design, that told them exactly what kind of people had once lived there. The people who built the world's first known urban sanitation system vanished 2,000 years before their achievement was even equaled, and the world forgot them so thoroughly that we had to rediscover them with a shovel. If this changed the way you see the ancient world, hit like, share it with someone who thinks Rome invented civilization, and subscribe to Unearthed Facts. There are buried secrets like this every single week. If this blew your mind, smash the like button. It helps more people discover these hidden stories. Share this with someone who loves history, and subscribe to Unearthed Facts so you never miss a secret.